Aye, the dwarves are upon you. You didn't know I could do Scottish, did you? Well, let me tell you, I can do Scottish. But only if you're from Edinburgh. Impersonating fat little dwarves is something very different indeed. So, hello everybody, and welcome for my first replay of me playing Erebor, as you might have guessed from that intro. And we're on Fords of Ising 2, and the person I'm playing against today is Django, and he's playing Imladris. So, dwarves are another one of those interesting factions for me, because, I mean, at least, the dwarves other than Eredlwyn are interesting to me, because it's a very different playstyle that you have to go with, and you really have to, if you want to play well as dwarves, you really have to start using the mines very well. Because they're just so goddamn slow, that if you start moving over the map as if you would with any other faction, really your enemy can just start to run rings around you. So really you've got to utilize the mines, because they essentially teleport your units all over the map, as long as you've got a mine in that position. So let's just have a quick focus on what I'm doing. As you see here, you may notice that I'm playing quite similarly to how I play my Gondor, and that is to send one of my starter units off here to creep this wildman, and send my other starter battalion to these two spots to grab the farms. Now, I also make a pike right off the bat, which I also do as Gondor, and let me just switch over to my Palantir so we can see what the money's like. So instead of going, I could have got a second pike, and here I do, but I could have got that pike a lot earlier to come and creep over here, but I decide in favour to go for this farm to try and grab some more resources. So here you see these guys are harassing, rather creeping those wildmen, and soon I'll be bringing out this pike over here to come over and creep these wargs. So really that's quite nice. And here you see, actually, I messed up quite a bit. I found it difficult to creep these two wildmen with this one battalion of guardians. Now, that's not to say that guardians are bad at creeping wildmen in the same sense that, say, Rohan peasants would be. In fact, it is quite easy to creep wildmen with one battalion of guardians. However, as we see here, Django brought over his Gildor. So, that little Gildor harass in the beginning was killing some of my troops, and he was also targeting my scout hero, Nori. So I was using Nori to try and chase off Gildor, and therefore Nori couldn't tank as much damage from the wildmen, and therefore the battalion was losing units. And as we see here, Gildor is just about to finish off that battalion. However, in the meantime, I've creeped this troll, and I've activated this power, polearm hammer strikes, which increase the damage towards buildings, so that building should go down very quickly, as we see there. So really, one battalion of pikes of Erebor is more than enough to easily and quickly destroy a warg pit. And as we see here, they're also reasonably good at creeping wildmen once this ability is activated. It essentially makes them more like swords and less like pikes, because it increases the damage against normal infantry and buildings, but decreases the damage against monsters and cavalry. So actually, really, the Erebor pikes are quite nice. Now, I did just use a heal there, just to make sure that these two battalions stay alive, and make sure that I can effectively creep this troll. So these two guys should be alright. So let's have a look over at the other side of the map. And here we see, still Gildor is harassing my units. I've still got no inside farms, and something that I would like to mention now is that because Erebor is so slow, and Iron Hills is exactly the same thing. Yes, you have to use very effectively their mines, but you also have to have something else on top of it to kind of fill in the gaps in between. So you might be harassing, as you see here. You might be attacking an enemy building, or you might be creeping, as I am here, without your building being built yet. Or if you were harassing someone, you'd be quite a way off your building. Now, if their units are faster than yours, and when you're playing dwarves, that's almost always the case, it means that if they come over to defend their building, they can very easily destroy a couple of your battalions. So really, yes, mines are so important, but they don't do everything, and you need some other type of presence on the map, some other type of mobility. Now, you can either get that through going for Dale and getting the Dale Swordsmen, who actually have a speed boost formation, so they're very nice, and also you can get pikes, who are just as quick as any other pikes. But personally, what I like to do, and I don't generally like to go for very early outposts, as you may have noticed in other games, what I like to do is actually go for battle wagons. And I like cavalry in general, as you also may have noticed in some of my games. And really cavalry, the battle wagons, which function as cavalry, really they are quite excellent once you start to get enough of a number of them. Here you see is one of those situations that I was talking about earlier. I harassed this farm, this troll pit, but he came over to attack me. Now here, these guys really can't retreat because the Imladris units are faster than them. Now I've used this mine over here to bring some more troops in, but I couldn't retreat these guys over to the mine. Now if I had some battle wagons, I could stave off these attackers and actually do some damage to them. Luckily these guys came in enough time, but as we see here, already I'm thinking about going for the siege works, and I have started to build the siege works. So now my main focus is on continuing to spam out some infantry to help harass his farms and gain more of the map control, as well as some battle wagons to deal damage to his units, and also have more presence over the map. So here we see a nice bit of splitting where I'm creeping over here. I keep getting harassing and creeping mixed up in this video. But yes, creeping over here to get some more farms, get a bit more money. Now, let's have a look at what Django's doing. He's played Imladris very well here. He's got plenty of troops out. And here again is the situation where when you're playing dwarves and when you're playing slow dwarves, how easily they can be trapped. Now, here they're going to be surrounded by Imladris units, so really this is quite a problem for me. And he's also put down the land, so they should have an armor boost. However, I've countered that by using the Ravens, which give an armor debuff. So actually the debuff counters the land directly by just completely nullifying the buff altogether, and then also adding a debuff on top of it. But still, because he had so many units, a lot of mine died. So there I lost quite a few command points, and that really is the disadvantage of Erebor and Iron Hills, is their speed. So you need to do everything you possibly can to try and rectify that. And once again, what I like to do is go for battle wagons, and a lot of other Erebor players like to go for early Dales and start pumping out the Dale units. It basically fulfills the same role. You're trying to counter your one disadvantage as Erebor, which is speed. Now, as I've said before, speed can be a huge disadvantage, and it can be so bad that some people say that dwarves, the slow dwarves at least, are underpowered. However, others say that they're overpowered. It's another one of those things where there's so many factions people consider to be underpowered and overpowered at the same time, depending on who you ask. So here you see, I'm still splitting. Actually, these guys should be over here harassing, so they're not quite doing as much as they should be doing. And here you see an example again of me using the mines. So he was harassing me here, but I simply had some units in the mines, and I brought them out. And also, axe throwers, if you didn't know, are excellent, especially in this patch. And then once you combine it with the battle wagons, as we see here, really you can start to do damage. And really this is an example where Django perhaps should not be splitting his units, because if you have one battalion way far into my base once I've got these battle wagons out, especially if it hasn't got pikes with it, then really it's very likely to die, as it does there. So that's another reason why battle wagons are so good, is that they can chase down units. Now of course, you're never going to be able to chase down a unit with those slow dwarves. So it's all about just thinking about what is the disadvantage of the faction that I'm playing, and how can I rectify that disadvantage. And something else I'd like to mention is that yes, battle wagons are a cavalry, and the reason why I'm getting them is simply because they are a cavalry and because they function like a cavalry, just in the same way that the Angmar Thrallmaster cavalry, which I mentioned in a previous video if you watched it, I mentioned that they are cavalry as well, and that they function as cavalry, but they're not that great of a cavalry, and the only reason why I would get them is simply for the trample, even though it's not that great. But personally, I actually think that battle wagons are good as cavalry as well. Then I don't just get them because they're cavalry, I also get them because they're very good cavalry. I didn't really explain that very well, but it made sense to me. Hopefully it made sense to you. And one of the reasons why battle wagons are so good, in my opinion, is because you can get these axe throwers on them, as we see here. Now, there's something about the Erebor battle wagons which is different to every other dwarf faction battle wagons. And as I say that, let's just have a little look at this battle where I bring in Bjorn, and really he can do quite a lot of damage, and he can fear units. So by fearing the units, they run away, and the idea in that was to separate the pikes from the swords. Now, it didn't quite work. I assume Django must have had a rallying call on, but still, as you see, another reason why the battle wagons are so good is for the barrels that they throw. Give them a barrel, laddie. So really, they are quite excellent, and there you see, yes, they suffer a lot of damage from trample revenge, but it's not that bad. And yes, back to my previous point about the axe throwers, and this is something that Amogat told me. I didn't know it before he told me this, but Erebor are the only faction, battle wagons, that can shoot, the axe throwers that is, that can shoot while the battle wagon is moving. So they're almost like a Mongolian cavalry army, in that you can sometimes, if your opponent has a lot of pikes, you can tell the battle wagons to attack the pikes and then just kind of like run circles around the pikes and make sure that you don't trample into them, and the axe throwers will do some damage for you. So really, if your enemy pushes too far behind your lines, you can kill a clump of an army, even if it contains pikes, because you simply, and this is just with battle wagons alone, you simply run around or circle round the clump whilst targeting the pikes, drop a few barrels on them until the pikes are dead, and then you simply trample the rest. So really, they are quite nice in that regard. A little similar to Rohan cavalry as well, but even the Rohan cavalry archers can't shoot whilst moving. So really, that is unique for Erebor. Now, once again, I'm splitting my army, and it seems here that Django is not splitting his army, which is probably a good idea now that I've got these battle wagons out. And as you see, the barrels do excellent damage. But because he has not split and he's got a huge clump, he's really outnumbering me on this side, so I've been pushed back and I've had to retreat into my mines. So again, another example of why the mines are so good, if you utilise them well, is that they can be defensive as well as offensive. But because I've split my army, yes, he's gaining an advantage on this side of the map, but I'm gaining an equal or greater advantage on this side of the map, where I'm unopposed by his troops. I'm somewhat challenging him over these farms, whereas I'm completely unchallenged over these farms, because once again, he's not splitting his army, and they're all concentrated in this one position. So let's have a look over his base. Now, he's got double production on his Origian Forge, and he's gone for the spell reduction buildings, which I like to go for as well, the Author Halls. And he's also gone for cavalry, which I love to get as Imladris as well. Imladris cavalry is an excellent cavalry, and it's also an anti-cavalry because of the speed boost. So that's something that I have to worry about, and that especially if you outnumber your enemy with cavalry versus his battle wagons, then really you can destroy all of his battle wagons. Because, and here we go, let them... Now, let me say, I'll finish that little point a little bit later, but I just wanted to say that that quote from Gimli is one of my favourite quotes from all movies of all time. It's just so epic, the way he says it. And when I was a stupid kid, when I first watched the Fellowship of the Ring, I had no idea what it meant. But now I know a slightly little bit about the Lord of the Rings lore, in that... Is it his cousin? Balin is his cousin? Or some relation to him anyway. He dies in Moria, and all of the dwarves that went to Moria to try and reclaim Moria died as well. So Gimli is like walking around in a graveyard of his own fellow dwarves because of the enemy that he's just about to fight, the goblins, and they're bearing down on him with cave trolls, and it looks completely hopeless, and he's seen all of his dead dwarf brethren. And what does he say? Does he cower in fear? Does he try and hide? Does he try and avoid the fight? No, he just stands there with his legs apart and his axe in hand, and he says, "There's still one dwarf in Moria who still draws breath." I mean, honestly, it's one of the most epic lines I've ever heard. And really, Gimli is one of those timeless characters, and the actor who played him just did such an excellent job at portraying him. So there we go. Look at that. That is the power of the oil barrels. They just completely destroyed that battalion of cavalry. And here you see I outnumber his cavalry 4-2. It was 4-2, but once the barrel came, really it was 4-1. And you see how much damage the battle wagons can do against cavalry, especially if they're outnumbering them. So really it's looking quite bad for Django now, because I have the entire upper half of the map, and I've got quite a large army here, which also has Gimli in it. And there goes Gimli's epic leap, destroying a lot of his troops. And that is what he gets at level 2. So really now it is looking dangerous for Django. However, he has got upgrades, but that's not to say that I'm not thinking about upgrades, and indeed I am getting upgrades out. I'm getting the heavy armor, so that's just going to help keep my units alive. And after that I'll probably be going for Forged Blades. I can't actually remember the exact order that I went for in this match, and usually I don't go for Gimli that early, but I mean sometimes you just can't resist the call of Gimli. So yeah, I mean, because he's gone for cavalry, and as I was about to say, once you outnumber cavalry, once you outnumber the battle wagons with cavalry, you can really destroy them. Because they're faster. The cavalry is faster than the battle wagons, so you can't really escape versus cavalry when you're using battle wagons. But it was just a prime example of how good battle wagons really can be. And we'll see here another little cavalry battle wagon battle. Look at the damage it does to this one. Now, whoa, there you go, that was it. And that was also partly due to the flank damage of the Rivendell Lancers. But look at the barrels, just destroying them. So yes, they inflict a huge amount of damage, especially if it becomes flanking damage. But so do the barrels. And really, those two battalions very nearly died. He did manage to save them, and he was thinking probably that he would kill a few of my wagons with those hobbits, because once again, hobbits do excellent damage. But as I've said before, you can actually run from the rocks. So the one that he's targeting that's on very low health, I simply run away, and with the others, I trample them into oblivion. So that's what's going on over there. In the meantime, I'm still pushing on the lower half of the map. Now he's using his cavalry to gain some more of the upper side of the map, and he's also pushing through the middle to try and harass this farm. And once again, I'm getting more battle wagons. And the more battle wagons with the more axe throwers you have on them, it just amplifies even more the effectiveness of them altogether. It's one of those things where it's like they're better than the sum of their parts once you get them in large numbers. So I've got the heavy armor upgraded here. Now let's have a look at Django's base. He's got a lot of command points, and once again he's got this production building. So his production inside isn't too bad. The amount of resources he's gathering from inside his base isn't too bad. But the map is almost exclusively mine. I was struggling to gain control of the bottom half of the map, but now I have every single farm on the bottom half of the map, whilst he is now pushing on the upper half of the map. Now, once I get the Forged Blades out, as you see they're being upgraded here, and I get those on the axe throwers can do a ridiculous amount of damage. You combine that with the battle wagons as we see here, and really, I don't think this Imladris army is going to survive for very long, despite the fact that they're almost fully upgraded now. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that I've accumulated quite a lot of power points from the fighting that's been going on. And what I decided to get was Final Stand. Now this gives plus 75% armor. It also makes the dwarves immune to knockback. And is it trample? Effects and slow cavalry down. No, so they aren't immune to trample, I believe, but they do slow down cavalry. So here you go, Final Stand. Now plus 75% armor. That is so huge. Now just remember, I've got heavy armor as well, and the dwarves have got good armor by default, so really I've got a huge amount of armor. And if I was Django in this situation, I would be running as soon as I saw that animation. Now we might have missed the animation or not noticed it was happening, because you can't, it does last for a little while, the animation as well, as you may have seen. But as soon as I see Final Stand being used by the dwarves, I would just wait till it wore off, because really the dwarves won't be able to chase you down. So what I would recommend if you were dwarves and you wanted to use Final Stand is that and in come the battle wagons to finish off this army now. What I would recommend, look at that barrel attack. What I would recommend if you were dwarves and you wanted to use Final Stand, I would wait until you were going to attack a a building, say an outpost, if you're going to attack an outpost, you're going to force your enemy to try and defend the outpost because he's made a lot of investment in it. And in that way, you almost force the fight. So you can use the final stand there, and he's still going to have to continue to fight you. But if you're just any old where on the map, like I was there, really there's no reason why your enemy shouldn't run away when they see Final Stand being activated. So that's just something that you'd like to think about. Anyway, I managed to do a lot of damage to his army, in fact kill his entire army. I had the entire map, and so it was GG. So that was really how I like to play dwarves, and how I personally like to counterbalance their one disadvantage, which is speed. And once again, it's through good utilisation of mines and good utilisation of the battle wagons. So you can try your own different tactic, whether that be Men of Dale, or whether it be just simply going all gung-ho on the dwarven units and see if their pure power can gain you the map. But I would recommend going for battle wagons. Now, that's not to say it's an easy strategy. In fact, it takes quite a lot of practice to micro battle wagons well. However, if you can learn how to do it, you can win a lot of games as Erebor against your opponents. So, thank you for watching, and goodbye, ladder.
Let them come. There's one noob in Moria who still draws breath.